There's cybersecurity issues, there's aging infrastructure issues, there's climate change issues that need to be solved, and I'm really excited that in my career I get to work on those types of problems. As a young professional, IEEE has given me access to opportunities to go to conferences, meet really cool people in the field, and so I think what IEEE provides is access to the larger community, and I don't know where else you would get that. IEEE-USA is my competitive edge.
IEEE Day commemorates the anniversary of the first time when IEEE members gathered to share their technical ideas, which took place in 1884. Worldwide celebrations demonstrate the ways thousands of IEEE members in local communities joined together to collaborate on ideas that leverage technology for a better tomorrow. Now engraved in its essence, the IEEE Day's theme is leveraging technology for a better tomorrow. While the world benefits from what's new, IEEE focuses on what's next. Hello, everybody. I'm Bala Prasanna, IEEE Region Director-elect, here to welcome you to IEEE USA's celebration of IEEE Day in 2023. Today we have my friend Ravi Annaswamy, a fellow IEEE volunteer and Society President for the Technology and Engineering Management Society. Ravi is the co-founder and CEO of Numocity Technologies. He is very passionate about clean mobility and is contributing to accelerating electric mobility in India and the world market. His strategy is on using IoT, analytics, and deep learning to accelerate adoption of electric vehicles and innovate through new business models of energy as a service. He has over 28 years of experience as a serial entrepreneur and as a business leader at Nokia and Siemens. He was instrumental in launching and scaling frugal and innovative solutions like mobile prepaid, data charging, and various VAS solutions in India and global markets. He championed entrepreneurship by working as the innovation head for the Bangalore site of Nokia Siemens Networks. Here is Ravi talking to us on emerging markets, unique opportunities in transition towards clean transportation. Ravi, take it away, please.
Thank you, Bala, for the invite and giving me an opportunity to speak to this audience. So, hello to everyone. It's wonderful to share some of the learnings and some of things what we do in some of the parts of the world and trying to see how it can be leveraged in other parts of the world. Today, I'm going to talk a lot on what is happening in emerging markets with electric vehicle adoption and the road to having a clean mobility transformation. I think that's something which is of interest for every single country right now, and they're all looking at what can be done. And when I look at emerging markets, when I say emerging markets, I'm talking about countries where EV is a evolving topic. EV is a new topic, and all of these countries are trying to adopt electric vehicles as a method of going towards clean mobility, and they are doing it in early stages. Unlike the more advanced markets in US, in Nordic, in Europe, in Japan, these are some of the regions where EV has been there for a longer time, and there is also a significant adoption. But what is interesting and exciting is markets like China, India, ASEAN market, Middle East market is where the larger volumes of vehicles and different form factor of vehicles come out, and they face very different challenges, unlike what has happened in the existing developed markets where EV has been adopted in a slightly different format. So, having said that, I think that makes it very interesting because one way there is a lot to learn from what is already being done. Another way around, you have to create a lot of new things which has never been tried. and try to prove the technology and the business models. So once that is done, it's probably something which can scale across the world. Just to take an example out of telecom networks, if you go back 20-25 years, mobile prepaid wallets or mobile prepaid means of paying for your calls, something which emerged from the emerging markets because people wanted to pay as little as possible to get their connectivity through. And once this technology evolved and it really business models were created, it scaled up so rapidly that if you look at now, world over, the density of telecom and connectedness is extremely high. In every country, the connectedness is reaching very high, and also with new 4G and 5G networks kind of already in these markets, we see that people are so proficient using data networks and trying to see how these technologies can be used for easier and faster digital adoption. For instance, in the last year or so, India is launched a method called UPI, Unified Payment Interface, a very easy method of transfer of money from bank to bank. It's a platform which is now enabling a huge volume of transactions every year. I think it's almost up to $1 trillion, which goes through this network, and this network is also being scaled. This is just an example where every single person is paying to each other through a banking system using very small token values, and they're able to transfer. And this is also paving a way to the way we handle EV adoption in these markets, because again we are looking at very different models with which it will be done. Let me take you through what is something we learned in early in the markets in most of these countries, is that the ecosystem has to be a connected one, and connected ecosystem is essential one. When EVs were talked about in 2015, 2016, most of it was seen as a new set of automobiles coming in and it will be used on the roads. But as the market evolved, what we realized is it's not one industry which has to come. We need 4 to 5 industries to come together to make a meaningful adoption of a clean mobility method. First, of course, the first and foremost is automobiles. You need to convert them into electric from where they are, from ICE or gasoline or liquid petroleum gas. You need to move them to electric. Electric means the powertrain has to be converted to electric. You need a new fueling source, which is batteries, whether it is lithium ion chemistry or different chemistry. All of that is important. Once you get this form factor, you need them to be fueled. And now you are not going into a fueling station which is giving you like an ICE engine. It's an electric battery. Now it needs to be charged. Charging happens through grid and utility who's providing you electricity. And then you start looking at how to utilize grid or renewables, and then bring EV charging equipment, or bring in this part of the world, in Taiwan and in India, we also are trying, or also some parts of China, we are also trying battery swappable system. I know something very similar has been tried in US now with cars, with neo cars, and all of them has been tried. But here we're talking about smaller vehicles, smaller form factors, and energy is being given to them in a different way. At the same time, when we also analyze, we realize that everything of automobile and energy, to make things work, you need to connect all of them. Now this is a new world of Internet of Things where everything is connected, and they need to talk to each other to make the workflows work. We need now a very strong telecom networks. We need a strong IoT network for them to work. Rollout of 5G is playing a very strong role to ensure that these are set up in place. And once these are in place, whatever we were talking about, big data and analytics and cloud for a decade or so, becomes even more a stronger reality, because all these equipment are generating a lot of data, a lot of context, a lot of information which needs to be processed. So you need a big network of cloud at the edge, in the remote cloud, and then you need software layers to understand these and make things work. So we saw an amalgamation of multiple industry to come together, because automobile industry is 100-year plus, utilities more than 100 years, telecom networks are close to a century. Software is something relatively new, but how do we make all of these work together? it took quite some time for policymakers and also the industry to understand that it's not one man take away everything, but you need the whole ecosystem to work for a faster adoption. And I think we are one of those companies. We saw this, and we evolved into a layer which can connect all of them, and that's a business what we do. And very interesting stuff is most of these countries in the emerging markets are looking at an EV adoption from an angle of multi-industry, multidisciplinary, and making things work. And when I mean emerging markets right now, I'm going to stress a little more on India being here, and I've come from here. But also, I mean the ASEAN markets, Asian markets, also in the MENA region, a little bit of Africa. But this is the regions where I'm looking at as an emerging market, just to set the context. And to give you an idea, to start with Indian data, uh, as you notice, there has been literally no clean mobility for many years, and then the last 2 years we are now seeing a hockey stick kind of a growth, that we suddenly see a huge spurt of adoption. And what was interesting for everybody to notice, that when we look at countries like India, Indonesia, or in most of the Asian countries, is that the vehicles being bought are not cars. Now, the composition of vehicles which get bought in this volumes are predominantly bikes, the two-wheel vehicles, or the tuk-tuks, or the load-bearing auto rickshaws, which are three-wheeled vehicles. And these are predominantly almost 85 to 90% of the sale which happens in the market are these vehicles. Then we have a very tiny car segment, very tiny bus and truck segment coming up. These percentages vary across different countries. India, China, Indonesia, Philippines, all of them have very similar here. But of course, some of the other countries like Singapore, Malaysia, it's more of cars than bikes and tuk-tuks coming in. And also in the MENA region, we look at more cars than the other form of tractor of vehicles. But also, what is happening is, because of the clean mobility, everybody sees the utility of smaller bikes and auto rickshaws for last mile delivery. When you look at e-commerce deliveries, food deliveries, the smaller vehicles are becoming popular in most of the countries for last mile delivery, and you see among the more expensive cars also these form factor of vehicles. So this is just to give you an gist of where the structure is. And also, one other point which comes out of this is the technology and the roadmaps and the various market models which were built in developed markets, keeping cars and higher capacity vehicles in mind, are not going to necessarily work in a market which is very different composition, and you need to find a newer models for it. So just to give you a gist of kind of vehicles we see, of course, the bus, the cars, and the trucks are there. But we also need to remember that there are a lot of load-bearing tuk-tuks, passenger tuk-tuks which come up, or auto rickshaws which come up, smaller bikes, even modified cycle rickshaw, the kind of, I mean, more of a cycle, which also is available in most of the emerging markets as a single passenger, quick move from meeting very popular. Also, another segment which is popular is more low voltage equipment, where just a battery, and these don't move fast. The we call it the e-rickshaws, because they don't move more than 30 kilometers per hour. It can be used for last mile mobility. So multiple form factor of vehicles coming in, and also multiple segments being created. Like we already talked about, the more popular ones are the smaller vehicles which are coming in. So just to give you an idea, this is how the adoption is. The lot of two-wheelers and three-wheelers are growing in larger numbers. A lot of large VC funding is moving into this segment. We see in India, SoftBank and many other venture capital funds are funding in the two-wheeler, and they are trying to build all of these vehicles as indigenously as possible. Government now, in Indian government and many other countries, that many of the clean mobility work should be done in their own countries. And there is also regulation in many of the Middle Eastern countries also, that the data and the cloud infrastructure, everything also has to be in that country. So starting from manufacturing also up till the data, all of them, every country is trying to see if they can create an ecosystem of their own. For instance, if you look at Middle East, Saudi Arabia, and many other countries are also trying to develop and build cars of their own. You'll see Sear Motors and many other things, which are many other vehicles which are coming up uh, in Middle East, which are all now indigenously developed in those countries, and everybody is trying to see how to build their own ecosystem which will suit their own requirements, starting from vehicle to grid to data. All of them, they're trying to look at how to make it work. From a sentiment point of view, I think this was the early researches which was done, and early feedback we have from the market is that when people are looking at purchasing electric vehicles, uh, it's known that it's a lower penetration. For instance, today I spent some time with Walmart. Walmart runs a large event called Converge, where they bring a lot of industry experts across, and they're trying to see how to leverage what's happening in the market apart from sharing what they do. And I had an opportunity and a chance to present on what's happening on the EV side, because they wanted to understand this, because there is a huge opportunity with e-commerce companies and retail companies to convert their last mile delivery vehicles to electric vehicles in different markets. And they have a lot of large warehouses. A lot of power could be generated in those warehouses, which can be used for electricity, which means makes it sustainable, optimal. And when we were doing it, what we also saw that was there was a lot of interest to see how the last mile vehicles in terms of two-wheeler and fleets could be used, and how they can adopt to electric vehicles, not just in one country, in multiple countries. And in that session also, I saw a lot of interest from the audience. A lot of them wanted to know which vehicle to buy, how can I buy, what is the range. There was a bit of range anxiety, price anxiety. So some data which was collected is, when people want to buy an electric vehicle, the sentiment also I saw today is that everybody felt responsible, that they should contribute towards uh, reducing the personal environmental issues. So they want to all contribute to this. People are also willing to pay a premium to buy a vehicle, because right now electric vehicles are premium than having a ICE engine, but people are willing to pay more. And people want to charge their vehicles fast, and we were also debating to find out, how do you make it faster? Do you really need to charge so many times? Because world over, we have also seen now that if you can charge at home, majority of the charging happens at home, and then only when you're on the move, there is a part of range anxiety, because you don't know whether you have charging infra. But in most of emerging markets now, charging infrastructure is coming up in a big way, which is already the case in North America, Europe, and Japan, where there is already an existing infrastructure. Now, I'm not saying it's fully done, but I think there is significant infrastructure built by vehicle OEMs, by government subsidies. A lot of infrastructure has been built world over, including in North America. But once we have this infrastructure in place, the range anxiety goes on. This is very similar to, I take an analogy again back to telecom, where in the early days we always wanted to wonder, do you want to have the tower set up first, or the cell tower set up first, or do you want to have the phone in your hand and the cost of the phone to come down? So it has to go hand in hand. In many markets, we saw that when there was more options of telephones, people adopted it very quickly, necessitating a need for having more cell towers, which means both of them went hand in hand from there, and the market grew. We expect a very similar thing to happen in most of the markets, that right now there are very limited option on the supply side and on the demand side, because demand is there. People are willing to buy. On the supply side, not too many options. The moment all those options come up, multiple vehicle makers, multiple charge point operators, we will see a strong adoption, both sides each fueling each other. I think that's what we believe would be an amazing opportunity. Early adopters, most of these vehicles are being bought in larger cities, smaller cities, and most of the larger cities buy two-wheelers and three-wheelers, because they want to have a less time to move, and they want to move very quickly in these cities. But this itself leads to congestion. So that's a challenge which transport authorities, and also most of the startup world is trying to figure out how not to increase this number of vehicles on road, because you're increasing the traffic anyway and leading to more congestion. So I think that's something we are looking at. And at the same time, the early adopters are technology savvy, and they really want to have these vehicles with a consciousness of being sustainable and being environmental friendly. As I said, range anxiety is a big issue. So when you look at public charging stations, not too many numbers in most countries. I just took India number. We are close to 10,000 public charging stations, but it's catering to a smaller number of EVs right now. But as the EVs expected to grow, these numbers are not sufficient. So large number of EV charging infrastructure in the country is expected to come in the next years. So we're looking at 500,000 to a million EV charging equipment to come, which is a pretty large opportunity. And this graph kind of shows that how the charging every month on month is increasing in a very fast way in India, and we see the same in many countries. One of the questions I always get asked is why we need to do all of this, because we may not have a clean energy mix, and are we clean in terms of net to net? Are we going sustainable? Are we really doing carbon neutral? If you look at it, an energy mix in a country like India now is still close to 60% is thermal, but solar and wind and hydro, the renewable energy ones, are reaching close to 26% on the energy mix. So it's expected that in the next 30 years, I'm sorry, by 2030, the next 10 years, we will see this percentage increase to a significant share. And that makes a lot of sense to move towards clean mobility. And I think that's where now there is a push from government, from everybody, to move towards clean mobility. Fueling station in learnings from North America and Europe, we saw a lot of charging done at home, work, parking, many of these places. All the emerging markets are more or less mimicking and doing the same thing. The charging is set up at home, at work, at parking, public places, highways, transport hubs. We also see a lot of centralized hubs coming in many of these markets, where shopping malls are utilized as a centralized hub. Some of the floors of the parking mall are created to be only charging hubs, so that people who come to shopping malls can charge a lot of these vehicles in one place. Of course, charging wherever you are is also happening. Charging itself is a big opportunity for a lot of new players to come in. We call them charge point operators, and like a telecom operator, and they have a very clear pricing model and a business model to offer services. Just to take, I presented some data on the Indian market. If you look at ASEAN market, a very similar. Thailand is the largest region in terms of number of vehicles being sold right now, followed by Indonesia, Vietnam, Singapore, Malaysia, and Philippines. Uh, but all of them now are very aggressively looking at how to adopt. So each of these countries are looking at what kind of taxation can be changed, what kind of subsidies can be provided, how do you encourage more charging station, how do I give free parking. All of that is being looked at is ASEAN market. But whatever I talk from an Indian market, you can assume in most of these markets is very similar, except in Singapore, which is predominantly a car market than bike and three-wheeled vehicles. But in other markets, it's very similar adoption. In MENA region, I looked at this side and the other side, which is on the MENA region. UAE is going very aggressively, looking at how to set up EV facilities, infrastructure, vehicles. There's a huge uptake of all the EV vehicles in the market. Also, if you look at interest-wise, a lot of interest now in Saudi, because, like I said, they are trying to create their own cars like Seer, Lucid, and many more, and at the same time setting up large charging infrastructure around the country. And very similar thing is being seen in Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, and UAE, and also in Oman. Personally, I also spend a lot of time and I work with many of these countries, and we see that there's a huge uptake, a lot of interest for both setting up infrastructure, buying and selling cars, and also manufacturing cars, which also necessitate a lot of R&D, a lot of investments. And one should also remember that many of these countries are building new infrastructure, new cities, and as part of that, they all notice that EV will be the way, and clean mobility is what they want to promote. Some of the challenges, I think I gave a little snapshot on what these countries are doing. What we see as opportunity and challenge, one of the first ones we always face in all of these countries are, what are the EV charging standards? What do you use as a connector standard? Not to go to too much of details, as you know, there are type 1, type 2, CCS, CHAdeMO, and of course, a new standard now, standard from which came from Tesla, which is now North American connect charging standard, which is NACS, which is driven by what Tesla standard was, which creates a little bit of standards fight like what happened in telecom between GSM, CDMA, WCDMA, and 4G. All of that, we now have multiple charging standards, and many countries have not really formalized and decided on any one standard. All the standards are allowed. That is creating a lot of friction in infrastructure building, and also for car OEMs to decide which standard to adopt to. In many markets, the market adopted standard is CCS2, which is a European standard, but there is also a lot of push on CHAdeMO, which is a Japanese standard, or GBT, based on how the standard comes also uh, from China. There was an attempt to do a common standard called CHAO-G between CHAdeMO and GBT, but all of them are evolving, and it will be very interesting space to see how this will happen. And I believe strongly in NACS coming up in US with Tesla, Ford, GM, all of them adopting it is going to be a kind of a game changer in terms of infrastructure. There will be a lot of pressure on CCS2, the manufacturers, car OEMs who support CCS2, and for the charge point operators, it will be a challenge. Whatever we see right now in emerging markets is also going to play out in the North American market. The one of the rationale for moving towards electric vehicles in this part of the world is to see, can we use renewable energy usage, and by doing that we create cost efficiencies, we also create cleaner environment, we also create cleaner mobility. Having said that, it is not something which is happening in a big way other than using the energy mix from the grid. uh, Creating charging hubs which utilize solar panels is still not very economical, because you need storage to keep it to give the energy to vehicles. Whereas a very interesting model which was started in Taiwan and then in China, which is now very strongly adopted in India and many of the other markets. I mean, we have seen this in Indonesia, it's coming up in Africa to many markets, is how can I make a swappable battery? Unlike the car batteries, which are done automatically using robots, here, because the form factor is different, whether it's a bike or an auto rickshaw, you can lift the batteries by hand, and you can remove the old battery and plug in this new battery. So this model was expected to uh, solve some of the problems. It is happening in markets, getting adopted, but also the business model of who owns the battery, who owns the energy, who own does the vehicle owner own just the powertrain, what does the vehicle OEM do? All of that has not been solved, and none of them are standardized, so there is no one network of battery swap where you can swap the batteries. So all of these are big challenges, and we personally believe that battery swappable systems will play a role when it comes to last mile delivery and vehicles which are of a different small form factor, and they would be able to adopt it. And business model has to evolve, and we have to find out how everybody in this ecosystem can be profitable. Will these ideas move to Europe and to North America? I strongly don't believe these vehicles will get adopted in a big way. So necessarily, not necessarily this technology, but I think we do see car batteries being swapped using robots, and this business model being tried out. Which personally, from my side, I'm skeptical, personal view, but on the smaller form factors, I believe there is going to be a scope. The emerging challenge in many of these markets are, though they all have power, what is challenge is the last mile distribution of power. And when you bring in a lot of EV vehicles, they all need to charge at either a building or a parking or an office, any of these places. And there, those buildings are not geared up, and they don't have the sufficient power to serve these vehicles. And at the same time, the last mile, the transformer and the substations which are available are also not designed to handle heavy loads which come from vehicles which start to charge. And for that, now a smart load management in many of these countries are a necessity. In countries like Singapore, it is made as a mandate. In countries in Middle East, many of these countries, we have a mandate to implement all of these. So this area of technology will have to evolve. It's a lot of power electronics here, And an extension of these will be to really see if we not only balance the charger and the vehicle, can we balance the power in the building using a building management system? Can we even stabilize the power on the grid? And I think all of that has been being worked out. In US and in Europe, we already know. In North America, we see vehicle to home, vehicle to grid in place. But in the emerging markets, it's still a new topic. We are evaluating, we are checking whether it's a meaningful one. And there is always a resistance because the car OEMs don't want their batteries to be used as a power source, because batteries are defined by the charging cycles. The more you discharge, you need to charge more, which means it reduces your lifetime and in turn warranty. So all of these are challenges, but at the same time, it's a big opportunity for technologies. And IEEE has a significant role to play here, because the standard between the grid and the charging is an IEEE 2030.5 standard, which defines how the communication should happen and how the information is exchanged. Some topics which are again exploratory in nature, very early stages, is that we are looking at wireless charging, because creating charging infra everywhere is going to be a challenge. So multiple types of wireless charging has been tried. Charging pads on the road on which the vehicles can be driven, many of them are being tried. We also see flash charging with ultra capacitor based trucks and buses mainly, not trucks, being tried. But these are early days, and these are some things we see as an opportunity for many innovations to come through. Quite recently, I think megawatt systems were already happening in North America and Europe. In emerging markets, also now we are starting to see megawatt charging system, mainly designed for buses and trucks. And we believe this will also be something which most of these companies are investing in, and we need to have a look at it. A totally different offshoot of the problem or an opportunity here is the financing of these vehicles, because the vehicles are slightly more expensive and we want people to buy them. So there is a huge industry being created which are financing these vehicles on the basis of data which comes out of these vehicles, because all of them are smart vehicles, and they give out the data from the battery, from the powertrain. Using the data, a lot of finance companies are working out lease models based on how you're using it, insurance packages based on how your usage has been, and also trying to create financial products which allow fleets and people to buy even the two-wheelers and smaller vehicles when it's required for business. And we believe that this is going to be a tech-driven industry, unlike the current insurance and leasing industry here. Because the vehicle and the charging is smart, you can even evaluate the second life of the battery, and you know when when the vehicle comes back, what is the residual value of the vehicle, and make products around it. And this is something which is happening and interesting there. I did mention about software and IoT powering the EV adoption, and there are several standards being worked out. Many of them by market driven, which means industry bodies are doing it. There is one particular standard which I already talked about, IEEE 2030.5, between the grid and the charging systems. This is information exchange to balance the load on the grid, balance the voltage, harmonics, and all of that. Not every country is adopted it, but these are discussions which are happening. It's a huge opportunity also for IEEE to get the standard pushed in this market. There are of course several other standards from IEEE already being used in EVSE on the charger side and the vehicle side. A lot of standards have been used. I think with this, I wanted to summarize and conclude. It's a market which is evolving, which is emerging. Each country has its own plan. Each country has its own method of doing it. I did not get into policies because policies are very different in each one of them, and technologies are very similar to what has been done in North America or in Europe, just that the form factors are different. So every vehicle OEM is trying to adopt their platforms of EV to work in these markets, and at the same time, looking at the actual need at each of the markets, they are also trying to come with uh, lower capex based vehicles, trying to make it more affordable, trying to build India specific products or Asia specific products, MENA specific products, so that you're not trying to make one product work all with certain amount of customizations. You try to get it working in multiple markets. And personally, I've been involved in uh, many of these countries, close to 15 to 16 countries, and we find it very exciting into what each country is thinking and how they are progressing in getting clean mobility. One question which I get always asked is, will all these countries only go for battery electric vehicles, or will there be fuel cells or an alternate means of clean mobility coming up? Yes, I think this is a topic which is for policymakers and also the industry itself, because the battery costs are still very high, which makes the vehicle cost not so affordable for masses, which means to move from early stage of the industry to a massive scale, you need a slightly different take on it. So there are a lot of different chemistries being tried out. There are zinc-based batteries and other batteries being tried out. And then when we are doing that, it's also interesting to note that fuel cell, hydrogen fuel cell based technologies are also being evaluated very, very strongly, because the expectation is that we don't want to build dependence on lithium based batteries like we have now on fuel. Should we have multi technologies, or even hydrogen being just a water as an output, can we or steam as an output, should we look at it, is a topic which many government officials and governments are talking about, and technologies are also coming in. So we will see how the market evolves on the vehicle side. On the grid side, like I already mentioned, a good amount of renewable energies are part of the energy mix, and that makes it quite an attractive thing to move towards clean mobility, because the capacities are increasing, and as the new energy mix comes up, I think clean mobility works much, much better. And I spend a lot of time on IoT and connectivity and software. We believe it's a massive opportunity, like value-added services on in telecom or in other networks, like the OTT in the way we do. There are a lot of services being built on clean mobility as a platform, and we believe it's going to impact a lot of these countries in terms of providing an end user benefits, at the same time also making it very convenient for him to use. With that, I would like to stop and give you a kind of a feeling that we come from the world where everything is happening at a rapid scale, and we believe there is so much to learn in each of these countries. At the same time, also so much to learn in whatever has been already developed and what's happening in most of the developed markets. And eventually, we believe there is going to be a lot of synergy, and everybody is going to benefit out of it. Whichever form we take, I think the mission should be to go towards clean mobility, sustainability, so that our public transportation and our personal transportation in the next 2 decades, the expectation is most countries by 2050, they expect significant amount of their transportation, all inclusive, will move towards something cleaner as a new way of moving ourselves from one place to another place. And that's what makes it very exciting and challenging. Thank you. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to present my views and present what we do in this part of the world. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Ravi. That was indeed a fascinating presentation. We covered a lot of ground here, and thank you again for that. It is also interesting to note that IEEE has a role to play, has been playing in terms of standards and in so many different ways. So that is for us to continue to think about it. So again, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Bala. Thanks for inviting.
I've always been a very hands-on person, and I like the beauty of a machine that is well put together. I'm excited to work here because we are building a state-of-the-art particle accelerator in order to make medical radioisotopes more available for cancer treatments. I want to build something that matters, and this is something that matters. Being a member of IEEE, there's a whole community of people who are interested in what you're interested in. IEEE-USA is my competitive edge.
Hello, my name is Matt Francis, and I'm the Director-elect for IEEE Region 5, the U.S. Southwest. IEEE Day celebrates the first time when IEEE members gathered to share their technical ideas back in 1884. Nearly 140 years later, as the U.S. regions looked at our theme this year, leveraging technology for a better tomorrow, we couldn't think of a better or more appropriate subject than semiconductors. With the historic investments in the U.S. in the form of the CHIPS Act, as well as companion programs around the world, with this series, we're highlighting the impact that semiconductors have had and will have on our society. With that, I'm thrilled to introduce Dr. Mukesh Khare of IBM on this IEEE Day. Dr. Khare is General Manager of IBM's Semiconductors Division and Vice President of Hybrid Cloud Research. He leads a global team of more than 1,000 researchers and engineers that are redefining the future of computing for next generation workloads, such as generative AI, high performance computing, and their delivery via hybrid multi-cloud. Dr. Khare serves on the board of the Semiconductor Research Corporation, overseeing more than $100 million in university research funding for semiconductors. He is the recipient of the IBM Corporate Award, IBM's highest technical award for leadership, and is an IBM Distinguished Engineer. Please welcome Dr. Khare to this IEEE Day USA series.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt, for a kind introduction. And thank you to IEEE for giving me an opportunity to share IBM's view on this very important topic of semiconductors, and in particular, semiconductors in the US. So my talk today is going to be about securing the future of semiconductors in the US. And this is truly an exciting time for all of us, especially all of us in the tech industry working in the field of semiconductors. Now, semiconductors are the foundational technology for pretty much everything that we do. All of the automation, all of the development is underpinned by semiconductor technology. Semiconductors are critical for national and economic security. Everyone understood that, especially during the COVID timeframe, when we saw how vulnerable our semiconductor supply chain has become. On one hand, this is such an important technology for national security. On the other hand, this industry is growing so fast because of all of the automation, because of the significant demand that the workloads such as artificial intelligence or generative AI is demanding on semiconductors. On this chart, you will see on the left-hand side that our industry, which is about $600 billion industry, is projected to grow to become a $1 trillion industry by end of this decade. So clearly, the opportunity for semiconductor industry is huge. That said, if you look on the right-hand side, the semiconductor industry has evolved from where it started in the 90s to where it is today, from its, the balance of where semiconductors are produced. If you look on the right-hand side chart, 90s, majority of the semiconductors were manufactured in US, Europe, and Japan. And over a period of time in last few decades, the share of semiconductor manufacturing in the US, Europe, and Japan has reduced dramatically. And many of the Asian countries like South Korea, Taiwan, and China have really taken over a big share of semiconductor manufacturing. Clearly, the semiconductor supply chain is now not as balanced globally. Now, if you look at it from a geopolitical sense, US does design a majority of the chips, but does not manufacture them. US has less than 12% of global manufacturing of semiconductors, and most of the manufacturing is now in Asia. So clearly, countries are realizing it that semiconductor is such an important technology, and it needs much balanced supply chain or much balanced manufacturing across the globe. As countries realize that, many nations are investing in semiconductors for their economic and national security reasons. China has been very aggressive in investing in semiconductors with their share of funding. Japan started Japan Chips Act with significant investing, considering manufacturing of semiconductor in Japan has reduced dramatically. South Korea has its own Chips Act. And new countries like India is also investing billions of dollars, realizing the importance of semiconductors and lack of semiconductor manufacturing in the country. European countries like Germany and France, they have created chips incentives to attract manufacturing, as well as Taiwan. And then comes the US Chips Act. As many of you know, US Chips Act is one of the once-in-a-generation opportunity that the US government has created to reinvigorate both semiconductor manufacturing and semiconductor research and R&D with an investment of more than $52 billion to support this program. So I'll talk a little bit more about what role US is playing and what role we can play towards much balanced semiconductor supply chain globally. So go a little bit deeper into the US Chips Act timing. Now, US Chips Act has many programs. I'm going to identify 4 big programs under US Chips Act, which constitutes more than 90% of the funding associated with reinvigorating semiconductor industry in the US. The first part is the manufacturing grants, and this is the timeline that was presented, and that's what the US Chips Act CHIPS Office is driving towards. In the manufacturing grant space, the journey has already begun with the request for proposal for leading edge manufacturing in the US, followed by the legacy node or more mature node, and then the grants associated with research and development. Manufacturing grants are good. They are one-time incentives. However, there is a lot of excitement around R&D initiatives that are being proposed and being driven as a part of US Chips Act. US Chips Act calls for creation of National Semiconductor Technology Center, or called NSTC. US Chips Office proposed a strategy paper earlier this year to lay out what are the principles around creation of this National R&D Initiative, or NSTC. And during this fall or later part of the year, we expect the initial stages of NSTC will be established under the US Chips Act. Another area that has been independently called out, called NAPMP, or National Advanced Packaging Manufacturing Program. And this is very exciting to see that packaging has its own investment. Advanced packaging is going to become the future to continue to drive scaling and continue to generate more benefit out of semiconductor technology. CHIPS office has been working very hard soliciting input from the industry and academia and community to develop what type of CHIPS R&D program need to be created for the benefit of semiconductor industry, especially in the US and then globally. We expect a strategy paper will come out sometime this fall to outline how advanced packaging program will be established under the US CHIPS Act. And finally, there was a program called ME Commons under US CHIPS Act, Microelectronics Commons, which is led by Department of Defense, because semiconductor is of national importance, national security importance as well. And I'm very excited to share with you that just recently, 8 national hubs were announced by the Department of Defense. Those will act like the centers to drive innovation in many areas of national security. So as you can see, CHIPS Act is getting implemented in US with a very broad end-to-end strategy all the way from research and development to manufacturing, as well as national security. Now come back from the broader national level to what we are doing in New York. New York has been very active in participating in semiconductor ecosystem. I'm talking with you today from Albany, New York, where we have a very strong semiconductor research and development ecosystem. IBM has been in New York for almost 100 years. Some of the very pioneering work in semiconductors came out of IBM research, such as the invention of DRAM cell that everybody uses, or the scaling principles that Bob Dennard created to help guide the industry how to scale and continue to double transistor count every 2 years. As you can see across the map, across the state, many IBM locations, all the way from our research headquarters in Yorktown Heights to Poughkeepsie, New York. If you go up a little bit, Albany Nanotech, which I'll talk a little bit more about, has become like the center for semiconductor research and R&D, both for the benefit of growing economic development in New York, but globally as well. Many global companies participate and co-create technology. As a part of New York's investment and providing opportunities for companies, there are many manufacturing companies who have both joined the New York ecosystem, like Global Foundries manufacturing in Malta, as well as the Wolfspeed manufacturing in Utica. And then most recent announcement of Micron's mega fab near Syracuse in a place called Clay, New York. So New York has been very active and has been continuously helping create a vibrant semiconductor research and development and manufacturing ecosystem. New York State has been some of the major initiatives, as you can see here from New York. New York passed a law called Green CHIPS Act in August of 2022 to add additional funding up to $10 billion in support of semiconductor manufacturing. Governor Hochul and Senator Schumer has been working very closely to support the Federal CHIPS Act. Senator Schumer has been the champion. He was one of the sponsors and continues to be a sponsor of US CHIPS Act to make sure that that semiconductor manufacturing and R&D comes back to the US, and New York gets a fair share considering the value that New York provides in this area. There is also a significant focus on building education pipeline because semiconductor needs a different type of skills. So how do we, and a skill which grows all the way from high school to PhD level. And New York has been very active to participate, to develop appropriate curriculum and excitement amongst new generation to participate in the field of semiconductors. As a neighbor, Canada has also been working towards its role on how US and Canada can participate and work together towards certain initiative where Canadian companies are very strong. It turns out that right across the border of New York, in a place called Bromont, Canada, there is a very large packaging manufacturing capability from IBM. IBM Bromont has been leading in packaging technology for last 50 years. It's the only such advanced packaging capability in North America. Canadian government announced significant investment in Bromont, Canada, to accelerate advanced packaging development and advanced packaging manufacturing so that they can contribute towards a much balanced semiconductor supply chain. IBM and the Canadian authorities signed an MOU in that regard. And there is expected to be joint investment to increase capacity, including chiplet technology, 3D packaging, co-packaging, etc. This essentially creates a corridor for advanced packaging between the Albany Nanotech or New York and Bromont, where we can perform both research and development and manufacturing close to each other in North America. IBM Bromont facility, it supports IBM product, high-end manufacturing such as IBM Z System, IBM Power System, as well as artificial intelligence unit that we are producing. This facility is also a US trusted foundry for packaging of US classified parts. This is the only facility that is used by Department of Defense in the US as a trusted facility outside of US. So clearly, as advanced packaging is becoming critical, both the US and Canada is participating to help create this corridor, as well as companies like IBM are helping in supporting technology in that journey. Now, as a part of US CHIPS Act, we have been working towards creating a coalition that can help shape the agenda, define the roadmap, and also help the US CHIPS Act on what type of work is needed, whether it's in research and development or workforce development or startups and other areas. Collectively, we have created a coalition we call ASIC, or American Semiconductor Innovations Coalition, which has now more than 200 organizations participating. It's a global coalition with a focus of strengthening American leadership in semiconductor innovation and manufacturing through the NSTC program that I talked about, as well as the NAPMP program. And for almost 2 years, we've been working together to develop agenda and have been actively sharing the outcome with appropriate agencies, both in the US federal as well as US state governments. So that as the US CHIPS Act is getting implemented, it's informed by the leading companies, universities, national labs, etc. You can find more about this coalition at accoalition.org. Now come to IBM's role. What have we been doing in this area to support and ensure that US continues to have leadership technology in semiconductors? Today, I'm talking with all of you from Albany Nanotech facility. It's a facility which is in the upstate New York. This facility was created in around 2002-2003 timeframe in a partnership between IBM, Tokyo Electron, and New York State, almost 20 years ago. And since then, we have been making systematic progress for last 2 decades, starting with creation of a Center for Semiconductor Research, CSR line, which is a shared semiconductor R&D facility where many companies, almost all the companies in semiconductor ecosystem are working together. IBM's FinFET program started at Albany Nanotech facility. Lithography used to be the most critical technology that we worked on, and it continues to be the most critical technology that both IBM, our partner, and New York State continues to invest in. The first alpha EUV lithography tool was located at Albany Nanotech facility. In 2011, the EUV Center of Excellence was announced, where the very early EUV tools were located. And then we created a program around it so that it's not only the EUV tool, but also resist technology, mask technology, inspection technology. All of those technologies can be developed around the EUV or extreme ultraviolet lithography technology. This is also the site where the first 450 millimeter wafer consortium was created, where industry collaborated and worked together to develop equipment technology and understand financial implications of 450 millimeter wafer. That consortia concluded that 450 millimeter wafers were not appropriate or not needed for continued, I will say from an economic sense, that it just did not work out well. Technology was available. IBM announced the world's first 7 nanometer chip technology in 2015 using EUV lithography from this ecosystem at Albany Nanotech. Since then, IBM, along with our partners, have been working on creating more advanced and newer technologies. In 2017, IBM, along with our partners, announced the next device structure beyond FinFET. We called it nanosheet device structure, as you can see at the 2017 mark here. In last 5 to 6 years, nanosheet device structure has become the most commonly or the only device structure that the entire industry will use beyond FinFET. We had also launched AI Hardware Research Center in 2019 in partnership with New York State, because it was very clear towards the end of last decade that the workload for future is going to be artificial intelligence. And the best way to develop technology that can meet the demand of artificial intelligence workload is to create a coalition, bring all the partners together, and co-create hardware and software technology so that the demand for AI workload on the silicon side can be met as well. In 2021, we were very proud to announce world's first 2-nanometer chip technology using nanosheet device structure. And since then, Rapidus, which is the fab or the company that the Japanese chips office has created, has also joined the facility to participate in 2-nanometer technology generation. So over the past 20 years, IBM has built unique capability to develop advanced semiconductors in Albany. And collectively, between IBM, New York State, and many industry players, more than $15 billion has been invested just for semiconductor research and development. And technology developed here feeds into manufacturing. And that's very important. As you can see at the bottom, that the Albany Nanotech complex, we co-create technology. It's a academic, government, and private partnership. It's the one-of-a-kind such partnership with more than $15 billion in investment that creates technology you can see in the middle, like 2-nanometer chip technology, that gets into the high-volume manufacturing, and that converts into product like IBM Z system, as you can see on the right-hand side. This is the roadmap for semiconductor innovation, both for chip and chiplet technology areas for IBM. We have our products in 14 and 7-nanometer manufacturing. We announced nanosheet architecture in 2017 as the next device structure beyond FinFET. And then we announced the world's first 2-nanometer chip technology leveraging nanosheet device structure. And this is not the end, this is just the beginning. And there's so much opportunities ahead of us going beyond 2-nanometer. On one hand, we are perfecting and maturing 2-nanometer technology, working with our partners, many partners, including the new Japanese partner called Rapidus. And we are developing technologies beyond 2-nanometer, of which we believe chiplet technology will be the most exciting technology that can supercharge Moore's law. In addition, on the lithography side, high NA EUV technology will be another major step forward in the space of lithography, in the space of traditional scaling. That's another area that we plan to invest and continue to drive feature size improvement. And on the device structure sides, there is significant work going on to extend nanosheet technology in much more stacked manner. so that one could find more knobs to continue to scale. So as you can see, there is continued investment and continuous focus on developing chip technology for the future. Here is a small section around the world's first 2-nanometer chip technology that we had announced in the May of 2021. And we estimated that it will generate as much as 45% improvement in performance or 75% reduction in power compared to today's 7-nanometer chip technology. So it's a very exciting area. We are continuing to play our role in much more balanced semiconductor R&D ecosystem. So with that, I would like to conclude that semiconductor is truly the foundational technology. Over last several decades, semiconductor manufacturing has become unbalanced, and both the US and the New York State is playing their role to help create much balanced supply chain for semiconductor. And this can happen only if we work together in this journey. So thank you very much for your attention. And I look forward to working with all of you in creating the future of semiconductors. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bob Becknell, Director for IEEE Region 5, the U.S. Southwest, and happy IEEE Day. I want to thank you for attending the excellent technical program featuring Dr. Mukesh Khare of IBM on this IEEE Day. Dr. Khare is General Manager of IBM's Semiconductors Division and Vice President of Hybrid Cloud Research. He leads a global team of more than 1,000 researchers and engineers that are redefining the future of computing for next-generation workloads, such as generative artificial intelligence, high-performance computing, and their delivery via hybrid multi-cloud. Dr. Khare signifies IEEE Day and what it is all about. IEEE Day celebrates the first time when IEEE members gathered to share their technical ideas back in 1884. Nearly 140 years later, as the U.S. regions looked at our theme, leveraging technology for a better tomorrow, we couldn't think of a better or more appropriate subject, and the IEEE organization that represents every U.S. member, that being IEEE-USA. I want to thank the IEEE-USA staff for putting together this program and strongly encourage you to find out more about how IEEE-USA is working for you. On behalf of the Region 5 Director-elect Matt Francis and myself, thank you and happy IEEE Day.